Turnout. Appreciate you all joining us today. Should be hopefully be a great conversation.
Oh yeah. Well,
And I think we're live. This always throws me off. I'm just going to assume we're live because I don't see anything that says otherwise. Oh, there's the official notification. All right. So, hey. Welcome you all. My name is Rick Banks. I am one of the co-founders and executive director of MKE Black Incorporated. We are a nonprofit dedicated to providing a one-stop shop for anything Black culture in Milwaukee. So whether it be Black-owned businesses, Black history, Black cultural sites, all that. We want to help Black Milwaukee thrive. And so we're proud to put on this event today as in honor of Black History Month. We want to promote the Black history that is Milwaukee beyond even just the struggles. And so we're honored to be joined by three great panelists who know a lot about the history of Milwaukee. Mr. Clayborn Benson is going to give us a presentation. He's the founding director of the Wisconsin Black Historical Society. Mr. J. Allen Stokes, who's the executive vice president of the Inner City Redevelopment Corporation, and Ms. Lashawnda Vernon, who's the president, or not president, the executive director of Artists Working in Education. And what's your role with the Bronzeville Advisory Committee? I forget. Are you the chair, just a member? Chair? The chair.
Executive director.
I'm chair.
Chair, yeah, chair of the Bronzeville Advisory Committee. So appreciate you all joining me. Just want to lay some ground rules. Folks, if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A section or in the chat room. I'll be monitoring those as we go on. For folks who are watching via Facebook Live, also feel free to throw any comment or questions in the chat. We'll try to get to those as we can, and we should be able to have a great discussion here today. And with that, I will pass it on to Mr. Clayborn Benson, who's gonna, introduce us to some Black history that hopefully we'll all learn something about.
Fantastic. Greetings, everyone. I am going to do Black history, and I am getting my image up now. Bear with me for a second, if you would. And we're going to start with this one. This is, and today you've all heard of Joshua Glover. I'm sure that all of you have heard that name before. Joshua Glover is a runaway slave from St. Louis, Missouri, and 1852, he escapes and comes to Racine. He's working in a wood mill where they're cutting wood. He and his owner finds out that he is in Racine. His owner catches him and takes him to Cathedral Square to the jail where the courthouse was. But the real story for Joshua Glover starts 2 years earlier in 1850, when the United States government under Henry Clay and John Calhoun, Confederate and the Union senators, negotiated a restructure and reorganization of the United States Constitution. Quietly as is kept, although the idea that African Americans are never named in the United States Constitution, the Fugitive Slave Law is in the United States Constitution. The North is upset because the South is continuing to expand to the West, and the South is upset because northern states like Wisconsin and others are helping runaway slaves to go to Canada. And so then they negotiated and they agreed, stop expansion to the West and stop helping runaway slaves make it to the North. Glover is arrested, taken to Cathedral Square, put in jail, and a mob the mob led by Sherman Booth. You've heard of Sherman Fogg. Sherman Booth breaks him out of jail and takes him to Canada by way of Waukesha and small communities in the Racine community area there, and they get on a ship and go to Canada. What makes this story significant, important, and the reason why people talk about it so much is because Wisconsin is the only state in the Union to openly defy the Fugitive Slave Law, a constitutional law. It's the only state to tell the federal government, jump in the lake, that indeed we are going to do as we choose to do and help African Americans make their way to Canada. It did not mean that they liked us, far from the truth. I invite you to ask me why they did it, but clearly they did do this. And they did it for a number of others that you don't hear their names. But it's the state of Wisconsin that does it. It's the only state to do it. Other states do it, of course, but they do it in the night. They do it before the law enforcement comes. They do it in the disguise, but they do it. Wisconsin does it in the open. They break the jail down. They do it with 500 people to rescue him and take him to Canada. Very important moment in Wisconsin's history. This is John Jefferson. John Jefferson is joins in 1860 as a young lieutenant and becomes the commander of the 8th Wisconsin, the Eagle Battalion. He is stationed in Vicksburg, Mississippi. He's active in Tennessee and Mississippi. He has a northeast corner of Vicksburg, and he holds it down very well. He's wounded twice and loved and revered. Why am I mentioning it? Because he is the grandson of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, and he lived in Madison. His father and brother is buried there. His brother's name was Beverly Jefferson, and he was just a normal sergeant, but they were successful businessmen in the Madison area. John Jefferson marries a woman in Tennessee and lives out the remainder of his life in Tennessee area. Beverly Jefferson. I have this picture up because of City Hall, because you may know alongside of City Hall there are a whole bunch of, excuse me for saying it like that, Black businesses just across the street from City Hall. 1890s through 1820s, and there are African American businesses up along Mason Street. Ezekiel Gillespie has a business there. A man by the name of, I'm having a senior moment, forgive me please. But he has a business also, said to be a very successful business. And I pray that I'll remember his name in a minute or two, forgive me. He is, he is inspired to go back to Africa to bring artifacts back and sets up a museum. It's the first museum in the state of Wisconsin, first African American museum, and they have that museum down at the auditorium arena area, and he sets up an exhibit about African artifacts. He goes over there. He's influenced by Martin Delaney, who is a back to African and colonial person, and they decide that indeed going back to Africa was a thing to do, and to make sure that the people in Milwaukee was aware of their African roots, and so he does do that, and so I want you to know that. This is William T. Green. William T. Green is the I won't say the first attorney, but he is one of the first attorneys, the very beginning. He graduates from UW-Madison, and he gets his law degree, and he handles all of the African-American cases. He is given a case by Mr. Hale. Mr. Hale is a businessman in that same area that I talked about. They get tickets to the theater, and Mr. Hale, the tickets are down front on the mezzanine area, and he's forced to sit in the balcony. Mr. Hale sues the theater, and as a result of that, William T. Green is successful in winning the case, and then takes the issue to the state legislature. And in 1895, state of Wisconsin passes the public accommodation, that's what it's called, public accommodation law, saying that African Americans can go in any facility as they choose to, and not be discriminated against. And we still use that same law that was passed Today. William T. Green, he He, along with a gentleman by the name of John Slaughter, who is also a successful businessman, I'd rather call him a gambler, who has a restaurant and a hotel and a gambling hall along Wells Street, First and Wells. They entertain Booker T. Washington when Booker T. Washington comes to Milwaukee in 1904 in the planning of the MATC as we know it today. The idea is built around the Tuskegee model, MATC, William T. Green. So this is John Slaughter, and John Slaughter is the gambler that I was mentioning to you just a minute ago, who is with William T. Green, and they have a coalition of African American businesses. John Slaughter is from Virginia, and he is the one who has a hotel. But there are a number of other businesses. Most of them are seamstress, laundromats, they're barber shops, they're beauty shops, those kind of businesses. But nonetheless, all along Wells Street, called Little Africa, the turn of the century, African Americans. Now, you would say that was great. It was, but that was the lowland. That was a land that nobody else wanted. You could take a look at that by looking at where the courthouse is. The courthouse is up on a hill. That area where Wells Street was, where they were settled at, was mud, dirt. Every time it rained, it was flooded, and many of the houses were on stilts. And that whole area there on Wells Street, going west, first, second, third, fourth, all the way up to 6th Street. All African American businesses, and also on Wisconsin Avenue, African American businesses along that area. This is Dr. Daniel Hale Williams. I'm sure that you all have heard of Dr. Daniel Hale Williams. Dr. Daniel Hale Williams is the first to do the open heart surgery. He is from Wisconsin. He's not born here, but he comes here as a youth, and he works in a shoe shine shop. He shines shoes and goes on to medical school, sets up a clinic in Chicago, and gets a client who comes in with a physical knife stuck straight in his heart, and the knife is protruding out in front of him, right through his rib cage. And Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, up until that point, they would never operate or never handle a person's heart. Heart was sacred. So he cut the skin open, parted the ribs, pulled out the knife and stitched up the heart. And the man lived indefinite period of time. Dr. Daniel, he did a number of other things too, but none so great as the first to actually operate on the heart, from Wisconsin, Dr. Daniel Hale Williams. This is Algae Shivers. Algae Shivers created the round bond. I say created, not invented. Well read, graduated from college, and the round bonds that existed in the Vernon County area, there is 19 of them, and almost all of his colleagues, and I say colleagues because they're friends, were Bohemians, Germans, and they were all great friends of him. Algae Shivers could repair any farm equipment. He had electricity in his house when it was unpopular. He had running water from the ceiling or from the rooftop down to his sink and taking a shower. Algae Shivers was innovative, and he encouraged his people. He got this idea from a farming magazine, and they built 19 round bonds all throughout the Vernon County and the community in that area. And they felt, because if the cattle are moving in a circle, they're most likely to place their waste in a certain place and eat their food in a similar place. And so it was conducive for good farming. Algae Shivers was his name. African-American men lived and moved in the northern part of the state in large numbers. And this is just simply photograph of that. I'm going to move ahead. This is uh, a picture of Mr. Wilbur Halyard, and the center picture is a group of Black men from Chicago coming over to negotiate. And on the far end, on the left is is Wilbur Halyard. On the far end is Dr. Oh, I'm trying to think of his name, Dr. Um, um, what is your name, man? Forgive me, please, you guys. I want to remember his Dr. Adams. Um, and he is now. You guys know that the drugstore on Burleigh 24th and Burleigh. Prior to that is this doctor who has a drugstore. He has a drugstore in the 1920s, and he is the first to have a drugstore, and he becomes very important. But he, more than medicine, he is a businessman, and so he is hosting a conference in Chicago and Minneapolis and Detroit of Black businesses. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I want to emphasize how important the Black businesses were, how important they viewed having your own independent business initiative, that we weren't going to depend on anyone else, that we were self-reliant. And these businessmen created a network of moving supplies and materials from the four cities in surrounding Detroit, Minneapolis, and Chicago. And so that these men were very significant and important. Dr. Halyard, Mr. Halyard goes on to form Columbia Savings and Loan at 20th and Fond du Lac, creating a possibility for people to purchase their own homes. And this is C.L. Johnson. C.L. Johnson is the darker man in the back there. C.L. Johnson starts his own tailor shop. He is a Tuskegee graduate. That's his wife. In the middle of the aisle, she is Cleopatra. Cleopatra and Dr. Are both Tuskegee graduates. And I mentioned that because they had a Tuskegee philosophy in terms of being business oriented and being community engaged. C.L. Johnson, who goes on to start the first YMCA and YWCA. These are two women who are coming to Milwaukee early 1940s. The men are mostly gone to fight in the World War II, and many women are coming to find jobs in the industry area. The Ale Smith and other manufacturers are retooling to only do military supplies and such. This is a picture of Walnut Street, and we all often see the other picture of the theater. This is a picture of what Walnut Street looked like from 6th Street farther going west, Walnut Street. And this is Dr. Josie, Mr. Josie rather. He is the mayor, he's a newspaper publisher, and he's the mayor of Milwaukee during that period of time. Mayors are very important. If you wanted to be a police officer, for example, or if you wanted a job working at the post office, you would go to the mayor because the mayor would speak on your behalf to get you those jobs. And the person organizing this whole thing is a woman in the back. Her name is Mrs. Bernice Lindsay. Miss Bernice Lindsay. She is in the back. She's like the third person in the back with her head up. She is the founder of the Delta fraternity statewide, the YWCA. She created the Creative Center. She never had enough money to really make that work. But she also was a person who realized that the housing issue was important. And so she was able to create the Booker T, the Carver Center over on 4th Street, right across the street from St. Francis Church. There's a small apartment building. She pulled together people to actually purchase and have that building built, mostly to show off, to tell the city we didn't have to wait for them. The city goes on to then begin to build public housing, but it's Mrs. Lindsay to show them off. And then finally, Mrs. Lindsay purchased a large portion of land over by Custer High School, over by 47th and Stock. The city wanted to take it away from her because she bought it for just tax purposes, but she was able to keep it and encourage her friends and neighbor friends to purchase lots and build their own homes in that area. This is 1937 when she does that. And many of the veterans coming home from World War II purchased land in that area. So that's when she bought it in 37, and she actually built, they actually purchased it and built their homes in 1945, 46, 47, in that period. This is a Walnut Street. I don't want to cut into our time, and where is the time?
Yeah,
What time?
Yeah, I would say go if you want to go for 2 or 3 more minutes, and then we could, there's some questions
okay.
coming in, and then we could.
Okay. So again, this is the USO. These women. This is organized by Mrs. Lindsay again. She does this. She has proms when the girls could not and the boys could not have proms at the school systems. She does proms. These are USOs. These are girls who would have dances for the guys from the Army and the Navy along the northern Illinois. They would come up for the weekend and they would have a great time with the Thanksgiving and Christmas. They would host these soldiers so that they could have some place to go. And this is Duke Ellington and the woman who's smiling, looking, she is Miss White. She is a union organist and very, very good. Duke would come to Milwaukee on a regular basis. He had an apartment over on the Galena, and he in that apartment would stay here. He wrote Satin Doll in Milwaukee, and his band would travel all over the United States, mostly in the North, and he would every time they finished performing, he would come to Milwaukee and he would write, stay here, greet friends and such, and then get back on the road. So Duke Ellington. I'll end it there so that we could do our discussion and such thing. Thank you.
Appreciate that so much. That was so many like gems that I never knew before, especially there was one in particular that now it's just going away. Hale Park and him starting Columbia Savings and Loans. I did not know that. And so just speaking from my personal experience, I was working on trying to start a credit union at some point. Still might have.
So the Hale Park is the first financial institution in the state of Wisconsin. Hale started the first institution, and Hale Park is over by 6th Street.
Right.
You know the sign there. That now Mr. and Mrs. Hale financed the majority of those homes, and so in credit, they named it Hale Park. But the street's named after it, the park's named after it, so yeah, their name is their signatures all over that Hale Park area there.
That's some good history right there. So I want to pass it to other panelists to see if they have any reactions from that as well. Lashawnda, or I'll start with Lashawnda.
So thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I have had the privilege of listening to Clayborn's talks on Milwaukee for my entire life. And so I feel happy when I get to hear the stories about the success and the excellence of Black Milwaukee. I also love the fact that my family and so many families here have been a part of that their whole lives for generations. And, there's been a lot of dialogue about what makes Milwaukee unique. I think that's one of those things. Black folks know each other here for a reason. It's not an accident. And I think I'm just going to stop there so that we can have the full conversations that I think will come from your questions.
Jay Allen?
If I may, just piggyback off of what she says before Jay Allen steps in there. There's this rebellious strength in the determination of all of these men. Although I'm only going to live a certain period of time, but that spirit of fighting and keeping alive, those men knew the business was so important that we can't depend on somebody else supporting us and taking care of us. And you could see all the way from the 1840s down through the centuries that Black men and women did not want to look to welfare or some sort of compensation for their survival. They depended on their own gut determination, and they spoke their own minds. Thank you. I don't.
Well, I guess I just add the fact that when I was listening to Clayborn's presentation and talking about Walnut Street, I grew up in the '60s and the '70s, and that's where you had all the businesses. Sorry about that. You had all the Black businesses. That's the only place. That's the only place you could go. I mean, it was 12th Street or North Avenue or Walnut Street, but you couldn't go downtown. So you had all the Black business, all the Black, people. There was a lot of Black doctors. I mean, you're like segregation had its advantages for us in Milwaukee because everybody, you could go up on King. Well, that track was Third North Avenue. You go up on Third North Avenue on a Saturday, and you see some of everybody. I mean, it was that close. You had to deal with each other. Now people have tendency to get away from Black folks. I mean, we survived and made it through that period of time because of other Black people. I mean, there was time you go to the store, you just had no money. They know you didn't have no money. They give you some credit. But boy, you come back and your daddy get paid. I mean, that was important now because sometimes you just couldn't, you come back and your daddy get paid, but you had to have that money. but that's how we survived though.
Ooh,
because people
that's
knew us
so
and
real.
understood.
You cracked me up.
That's right, girl. They had no money. You come back and your daddy get paid, and I know your daddy and your mama, so you better bring that money back here too. But people can do that though. I mean, you respected older folk. You didn't, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. You didn't get out of order like that. You didn't. I mean, we were very, very. I mean, it was cool. I mean, I lived in Hillside. I didn't even know we was poor till I left to go to Pius High School. And saw everybody said, man, I thought we was doing pretty good where we lived because we could all. I never went hungry. I never didn't have a place to stay in my life.
So
and now you got people who can't. So that's part of it.
I appreciate that. I just love the house phone. Love the house phone. That was good. But I think you really kind of started with what I was kind of going to get at with my next question, which is one, if you're from Milwaukee, when did you come and why? What brought you to Milwaukee? And if you're not from Milwaukee, or if you are from Milwaukee, what are some of your earliest memories of Milwaukee and Black people in Milwaukee? And I think, Jay, you kind of started on that. And I'll pass it to Lashawnda, and then if you got anything else, we can come back.
Okay, good.
My family's been in Milwaukee for 5 generations.
Wow.
I've been saying 4 for a while, but my nephew is having a baby.
Hey.
So that officially makes for another generation. So therefore now it's 5. So now I'm gonna wear y'all out with my 5-generation Black in Milwaukee. But like my earliest stories of being Black. So first of all, I was raised by a family that taught us we were never slaves. And when we talk about the American perception of slavery, I was raised to believe that our family was far enough from the lineage of slavery to not claim it. So whatever that means for Black, for everybody else, it's a spectrum. Sit it where you need to sit it. But for us, we were raised to never believe we were slaves. My grandfather went to college. My grandfather played piano and toured with little Jimmy Scott. Like my family was an artist family in Bronzeville. My grandmother sang, my whole family sang. They owned businesses. My great auntie retired from Northwestern Mutual, not as an assistant, but as an accountant. So we got a family of people who either owned businesses or worked in corporate spaces. So therefore, we had a very different experience. That don't mean we think we're better. I'm just telling y'all that part of it was the way that the programming worked. It had us all believing that everybody was slaves for way longer than they had to. So you didn't have a story to pass on that's generations long. I'm blessed that I have 5 generations in one place that allow me to do that work. But not every family can do, like, I can't do it throughout my entire family tree. Just the portion that established themselves in Milwaukee. I can take it back to Shreveport, Louisiana. I can take it back to Pensacola, Florida, where the rest of my family is. But some of it is the lineage adds tribal implications. So some places that you're from, you can be this color of bronze, but you really also have family that was married into tribes. And if you don't have the relationship of what indigenous family tribes you come from, you got to do that work, right? So we definitely had a highway here, though. Those businesses, the mecca of our economic prosperity in Milwaukee is the intersection where the two black banks were. 27th Street, according to my elder that trained me on it, Teju, was the original boundary of Bronzeville. I noticed that there was a mayor of Bronzeville written on that picture. Can we just bring that back? I'm kind of like the mayor of Bronzeville out here in the street. Okay, so I'm gonna get me t-shirts made. Let me know. I'm gonna go print some t-shirts. No, I'm just playing, but I might. I'm just playing. Like at the core of it, right? That's the intersection. That's the place where that was our little Africa extended to that point, right? As it was moved around by boundaries or whatever, that's still where it lived. When we could still get home ownership, that's still where it was, and that's still where it is. If we keeping it real with ourselves, we just can't lose sight of that. What cuts right through there? Fond du Lac. What was Fond du Lac? The fur trading highway. What was it? Also the highway that took slaves up to Canada. So it was those two things, which is why there were plots of land around it. Y'all didn't know that I went to school at Marquette around city planning, and that's my favorite thing. So if we ever look at the map, if we look at the way the city is designed, we chose false highways because the real highways were what was getting us to the bag. What was the real highway, y'all? Fond du Lac. Never forget what Fond du Lac is. It was the cut through. So, like at the core of it, the more we know about how this place was designed, the better we can support when Black folks are passing through this pipeline, whether they stay or continue. But we have to start recognizing our purpose in that as Black Milwaukeeans that commit to being here. That means we have a responsibility to hold that history, to engage in making sure new people understand that history, and then build a direct relationship to the economic prosperity of our people through it as a gateway. Because that's the gateway. Because I know we want to talk about where we was. We was a whole lot of places before slavery too. But I really would like to start talking about where we're going. Because that's what's next.
I agree.
I love all that. And I just want to say, like, yes, that's such a blessing to be able to say, like, I'm 5 generations deep in the city of Milwaukee. Because now I think about
it's a hard flex, fam. And
it
some
is
days
like,
I be like, look at this flex. I need to do a
right.
rap album just based off that.
Because I'm thinking, like, I know that all of my grandparents, I think, came to Milwaukee from Mississippi. And, you know, but I know like my grandfather had a store, maybe a furniture store or something on 27th and Valide at the time, which fits with that 27th Street boundary. But yeah, that's such a flex. But yeah, we're gonna get to where
well, Valide Street was in our area too. I mean, that area east of 27th and Valide was one of our areas in which we lived on. So Valide Street was a popular. But more than that, the spirit that she brings to this conversation is the same kind of determination that our ancestors possessed to make it over some of the hurdles that white people put us through, and they have. And they fought back in every step of the way. They weren't kissing butt. They was tough.
Yeah.
All right,
And more to Lashawnda's point, like one thing I was just reading about was like one, Black people have been in Milwaukee since the beginning of Milwaukee, right? Like we're not just recent transplants. People was here in 1885, 18, whatever.
Earlier than that, brother,
Yeah.
16.
Wow. Okay.
16, yes, sir. All over the state, as trappers, guides, as frontiersmen, and many of them were widely respected.
Wow.
They weren't just enslaved people; they were respected and admired for their skills and expertise.
That's amazing.
James Beckwith is one of them.
Yeah.
There's a sister who is a descendant of the Menard hardware store, Mary Lou Menard. There are others that were widely respected throughout the entire state, and we're talking early. We're not talking just when at 1800. No.
All right. That's what's up. Jay, you got anything else you want to add before I switch gears a little bit? All right. So my next question is now we want to start talking about, some of the change that's happening. And I want to pass it to Lashawnda to tell us more about Bronzeville. You kind of touched on it a little bit when you talked about Lisbon. Can you tell us for those folks who don't know what Bronzeville is and kind of the history of it, give us some more of that, and then talk about the future of Bronzeville.
Yeah, so all right. So now it's so cool to be Black. So it's so fun to have these conversations because everybody wants to understand these new ways to be Black and to take it to the next level. I think right now, first of all, I want to shout out the whole concept that Octavia Butler brings to the table, and then Adrienne Marie Brown around this emergent strategy of what we could do, right? But it's so rooted in this reality that what we've already done happened. You know what I'm saying? Like the show on HBO Watchmen. When everybody watched Watchmen, a lot of people didn't know about Black Wall Street. Like it just wasn't something that people knew was a thing, right? But when you turn it into something fly where a Black girl is whooping everybody in the movie, right? And we're all yes, girl, yes, right? At the core of it is awakening a whole lot of things about what we could be doing and what really happened. The reality is every time that Black folks have come together and started to self-rely, coexist, and cooperate with resources and build a hub of that, it has been intentionally destroyed, whether it was through policy, the nice way, what they call Midwest nice. It's still racism, no, but they call that the Midwest nice. See, the locals of the Midwest cut through it real good. Come get you some locals if you ever trying to cut through. We got cute words for it. But there's also this engage of just direct, we'll just kill y'all, depending on where you were in the country, right? So when you look at it from the Carter G. Woodson perspective, we just had there was a woman, she's white, and that's okay. That's fine. She was talking about Bronzeville, but she called the term generic. And Rick, we're gonna talk about this later. The word generic is still on the city website. I had did some edits, but they didn't all did. So we gotta fix it, right? So it's not a beef, right? But then I was like, wait a minute, let me help. Because if white folks thinks it's generic, so do Black folks. It's not generic, it's co-occurring conditions. So when you see a place become supported by Black people collectively, the first thing we do is we villainize it. We call it something like segregation. And the challenge becomes segregation is a result, not a decision making process. It is a result of the violence that people experienced in places immediately surrounding said segregated place. What I'm saying nicer, Wisconsin's the one that's racist. It is not Milwaukee. It is what is segregated. It is not Milwaukee. So you have to do the work around, we do this around safety. We do this around maintaining the very thing that Brother Jay Allen brought up about knowing each other's parents was a factor of one of those Bronzevilles, right? Having a direct connection to the people that you work with, that you live with, and that you entertain with, right? That's what the core is of Bronzeville. So if we take off what's been done to it and then we give it boundaries like maps do, right? If we take that off, it is that happening on purpose. So we've been Bronzevilling, right? So now I'm helping us use the word. It's a muscle. Use it, right? We're Bronzevilling whenever we create things like what you're doing with Milwaukee Black. whenever a Bronzeville collective pops up and then they create a cooperative economics amongst one another for which we all support. When the airport opens up the spot, trying to build some cooperative economics in another spot. When I'm working somewhere else and I go get as many Black people as possible to collaborate on that project, I'm doing something to make the elements occur of Bronzeville, right? So it's a way of working, it's a way of living. So I like to do that first before we get the emotional attachment to what I founded and what I started and called Bronzeville, because it makes it very difficult, because that's a thing that we can't own. We can't own the word Bronzeville. We can franchise and use it, but we can't own it, right? So when we're talking about level, that's the most important thing, right? Now, how do we activate that? Look at everything you're doing in business and see how frequently you make sure that it supports Black people. And if you're Black, you automatically doing it. So how do we keep doing that? When I make a move on something that's for me, it's for us. And then y'all just got to trust me when I say I'm doing that. And then vice versa, right? So for Black folks, we got to learn how to trust each other, and we got to stop burning each other. And that's how we build towards actually having Bronzeville characteristics in our city, because it makes no sense for a city that is predominantly Black to function as if it needs everybody else's help.
Preach.
Okay, sister.
We got a question in here, and maybe you might have answered it, but feel free if you want to expound on it a little bit more. It's how can we create another little Africa utilizing the current state of hypersegregation that exists in Milwaukee? Now open that up to the floor, because I know Lashawnda's been going.
How can we cover another little Africa?
Create another little Africa utilizing the current state of hypersegregation that exists in Milwaukee.
Well, it was segregation that put out Little Africa, put it out of business. The district attorney made the decision that there weren't going to be any more gambling in Milwaukee, and the first person he goes after is Slaughter. And Slaughter did not have an education, although he was a successful businessman. He did not have an education. He purchased a bunch of land in downtown Chicago or houses, and they ran him out of it, and he lost all of his money. He had the connection, and he had the willpower to do as we're talking about doing. But the answer to your question is get an education, because that's the thing that caused him to lose. He didn't have the education necessary. Successful, good gambler, good businessman, but not the education to hold on to it.
Stokes?
Well, I would just say that I think that, just listening to Lashawnda, listening to Clayborn, and thinking about, where we are in relationship to businesses and how can we do that, it's a difficult task, but it's something that we need to have a conversation about. People need to start talking about it. People need to start saying, we want to do it. I mean, the conversation has to start with ourselves, with our community. Say, well, we want, just like a place where you can go get your shoes fixed up. But, and we need to start saying that we want those things in our neighborhoods where we live. And we have the dollars, we have the net disposable income to say, okay, well, if we want to go on King Drive North, or you want to go on 27th Center, I want to this. But we need to start saying, this is what we want. And we need to start doing what's necessary to get there. I mean, there's different kinds of programs, different kinds, Rick, now you work with stuff with the city and different kind of buildings. When I sat on the planning commission, I used to ask every time, how could they come up with ways to make projects go downtown, but you can't come up with similar ways to make projects go in the neighborhoods where they need the services. But you got to be able to be smart enough to access the resources that are there. There are resources that they use all over the city for other kinds of developments. I mean, I could give you a litany of developments that came before the planning commission where they made it happen. We need to make something happen in our neighborhood, and we need to make sure that we demand that it happens. We need to come to the table and say, this is what we want. I mean, we got the brains, we got the smarts, we got the intelligence, we got the people. They can come up with, you got kids say, I used to do a little thing at the Godfrey Avenue Elementary School, and I asked the kids, said, build me a knit city. And you better believe them little kids can build you a city. They can tell you exactly what they want. I say, tell me what you want in the city. And the little kids, these little black brothers and sisters. So we got some older folks who say, this is what we want. Let's make it happen.
I'll give my answer. You can download the MKE Black mobile app on Android and Apple devices now. Make sure you go out and support some Black-owned businesses. And while you're at it, visit our website, mkeblack.org, and make a donation so we can keep doing good things happening in the community.
So,
go ahead, Mother Benson.
Yes, in one of the meetings about the Hale Park area, the lady who's the president says, we want our businesses to we want our neighborhood, our our Hale Park neighborhood to stay Black. That's what, and this is created with the idea that we're going to recreate the Walnut Street piece. Now, we allowed Mr. Robinson designed the Central City housing development there on 6th and Walnut Street. We allowed that to die. We needed to hold on to that. We needed to keep that alive. And now in the meetings in the Hale Park Neighborhood Association saying, we want our homes to stay Black. We don't want them to be integrated with Europeans. They're moving in the Brewer Hill area. They're expanding. We want this to be sacred, and yet we're losing ground on this. We got to hold on to this. We got to fight for this. And as I explained in my presentation, the fire in the gut of those ancestors were strong. They were determined to keep their family, to maintain and not depend on anybody, and keep their business running alive. So I don't know if that says anything, but
I have a question.
We're losing ground under us if we don't hold on to. There's no reason why a Black person couldn't purchase one of those homes, and there are white people moving in those homes right now. We don't want that. I don't want that. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
I have a question. So I know I can imagine, right, that somebody just got rubbed the wrong way, right? Like, what? You don't want integration? Like, how can we say things like that, right? How would you respond to those folks who might see such a thought as reverse segregation, reverse discrimination, or whatever you want to call it?
There's so much racism in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's just light years. They lynch us in the South and shoots us in the North. I mean, it just continue to happen on a daily basis. I say a daily bit because that's pretty extreme, but there's racism here in a big kind of way. We didn't
So
even
I want to talk to that a little different. I want to talk to that from this real estate brain. So my family's owned property in a couple areas in Milwaukee, but my grandfather and one of my great great grandmother owned on Palmer Street. My grandfather owned a house on Palmer, and right across the street from the school. It caught on fire many years ago, so that house was gone, right? And it was very difficult for me to get a house in that area, and I had tried very hard, but it was a difficult challenge getting connected to getting the house. And so that was before I was even on the Bronzeville Advisory Committee, before I was engaged as much as I am now with DCD and getting a better understanding of RFP processing and who's actually responsible for what program, because in the beginning of that challenge, I didn't know what I didn't know. Okay. So when we talk about Milwaukee's racism, that's where it starts. It starts in the things that you don't know how to do or get. So I want to roll back one important factor of Bronzeville of old and Bronzeville of now. A large percentage of that was not owned by Black people. Some Black people owned, but some were renting from other owners in that area. And that is a huge factor of why the impact of us actually fully benefiting from the Bronzeville we had in Milwaukee missed the mark. So I can say that just from the property and land perspective, the old effort to pull together Bronzeville elements didn't have enough ownership. Not all were like that, but not enough to make enough impact, right? So it was a little easier to cut through certain areas because there was another owner. Very much an issue that we still deal with today, that lack of home ownership will dictate how much resource goes into those areas. Same thing for businesses. So now I'm serving on this Brownsville Advisory Committee. We wander and trying to figure out what we're going to do. And I don't mean that in an accusative way. Like, let's explore this question. What about this in DCD? Oh, who's responsible for this? So I've been exploring for the last couple of years, asking a lot of questions, trying to figure things out. One thing that tangibly came out of that is we did create some additional questions for developing in Bronzeville for RFPs, right? We did that with DCD. So it took us the whole time I've been on the Bronzeville Advisory Committee to do it. I'm just gonna say that first of all. And I'm joined in that indictment, right? This has not been an easy process. It has been very difficult, but I didn't make it. So I'm not holding myself accountable to that. I say that because not enough people are even showing up to that public meeting. I don't have enough people that are interested in serving on that committee for the right reasons. Hold on, let me back it up. For the right reasons. So as I'm sitting here with a committee in my hand, and we on this Zoom, my hope is that everybody starts showing up in that space, because that's the only piece of land that we have in this city that has the word Bronzeville attached to it. It's also the only piece of land that is an arts and cultural district specifically for us.
White people want that. White people want that land. I'm telling you, they want it very much so. They want it.
Come help me is the moral of the story, because I'm smart, but I can't cover every base. You know what I mean?
Well, call me. You on
the agenda. You next.
All right, I'll be there. I'll be there.
At the core, all this stuff has to come together. Everything that I am working on right now, I'm saying, did we already do that? Who did it? And go get them. Don't you bring me no new plans. We got way too many. We ain't fully activated. That's one that's active. And we're carrying it, trying to figure out who all needs to engage in this space. And it's an exploration we must do with tact. But I'm talking to the people that need to be at that meeting too. I know. Because then if you understood what was coming out of our mouths every other month and what we were being presented, that's when we can really be held accountable. Because if you don't come, I can't be held accountable. So it's just my way or the highway. And I ain't saying that to be in any way shady. That's not how I function. But if I wanted to, I could. That's the thing that concerns me. What if I walk away?
I'll come to the meeting.
That's right. So
I'm not even only talking to y'all. I'm talking to the community.
Yeah.
Come maintain this. Y'all fighting the police. Put some money in this. Put the energy into this, because if we ain't broke, we act different.
They should send me the info. I can send it out to my list.
Yeah.
The question should be, and I know that Thomas Cheney is turning over in his grave now. Why couldn't we support and maintain the central building there on 6th and Walnut Street?
Yeah.
Why couldn't we save that building? Now, I don't know who was renting it out, but we've just let that whole complex deteriorate. That's just an example, one example of just turning your back on the, and I'm not talking about anybody here, but I'm talking about in general, losing ground of the very thing that she's talking about is holding on to what belongs to us. He worked tirelessly to get that building in place and to pay for that. And you should look at the building falling apart right now. That's all.
So I want to try to get one.
So y'all, the next meeting, for the record, is the 15th of March at 9 a.m. If you are not connected to e-notify to receive the update, that's the best way to find out when the calendar will hit. I don't send out the notification emails because the official notification for the meeting is not sent out until we confirm that we have a quorum. So I only have a tentative date. I'm saying this on record because I'm fine with sharing that we get tentative dates first, but that's the tentative date. But get e-notify, because if for some reason that changes or if we cancel, then we would be able to communicate.
Where's the meeting at? Where's it at?
It's virtual right now. It's virtual right now. So we haven't gone back to any hybrids yet. So we're
Okay.
still doing virtual meetings.
Okay.
Well, I want to be respectful of you all's time, recognizing that I only booked you for an hour, but I do want to ask. I think we're having a good conversation. There's some great questions in the thing. Could I get 5 minutes or so? Okay, sweet. So I'm gonna combine like 4 of these questions into one, and it's probably for Clayborn, but Lashawnda, you got the land background. And Jay, you know answers too. Feel free to hop in. There's a question of, were there many Black farmers in Wisconsin in the late 18 and 1900s? Did they own their own farms? Are there any barns still standing? And what happened to being able to purchase land in the metropolitan areas up north?
So after the Civil War, many African Americans made their way north with white soldiers, and they settled in various communities. One place would be Freedom, Wisconsin, just north of Appleton. That's called Freedom, but that's because of Mr. Jackson. They wanted to name it Jacksonville. They named it Freedom because that's where he got his freedom. But I just use that as an example. There are many, many other examples of such people who, Black people who lived in other areas of the state, all the way to the northern part of the state. And there's 2 African American communities, one in Pleasant Ridge and the other in Cheyenne Valley. They're in the far western part of the state. Both of those groups of people came there, 100 in each, came there 1850s, and they settled in. They were all farmers in that area, and they lived. They were well read. They had their own schools. They wrote. They wrote poetry. They traveled. They went to college. They were terrific people. Very few of them are living there today. 1850s, 1860s, 1870s. They came. Some of them came as runaways. Others came as free people. Some came with their owners, the slave owners who gave them their freedom before they left. But to answer the sister's question, yes, there are farmers. They were farmers, and they were good farmers. I'm told that there's a couple farmers lived in Dodge County. That's a separate county north of us, off of Highway 41. So to answer your question, and they are contemporary. I'm talking 1940s, 1930s, in that period of time. So there are farmers. What other questions did she have, please?
What happened to the ability? Well, one, are there still barns still standing?
Yeah, there are some barns still alive, still standing. They're trying to get reparation dollars to repair some of them. Hillsboro is where, right outside of Hillsboro, Wisconsin, north of 94. Hillsboro, and there's a place called Cheyenne Valley. In that area, the round barns do exist. You could call the Hillsboro City Hall, and they'd be more specific in terms of the exact location of that particular area. That's where at least 1 or 2 of the round barns do exist. And you could go online, and they are listed online. There's a book I have here on round barns as well. So there are articles about round barns in Algae Shivers and the innovative spirit that he brought to. This is a Black man who, and most of his friends were Europeans, Bohemians mostly, and they loved him. He could repair any piece of farm equipment. He taught them even how to work together as a unit rather than individually and get more done. Ernie Shivers is his name. I'm sorry. I didn't need to go on with that.
No, you're fine. And thank you, Denise. Denise just dropped a great link in there about round barns of Vernon County. So folks, check out that link to learn more. And I think I'm going to end it on this last question before rounding it out. Rosie, I see your question, but I see that you have a relationship with Lashawnda. So maybe Lashawnda, would you be able to type an answer for her, or hopefully you all can connect later or something. But Walter Lanier types, this is probably a long answer, but has anyone done an analysis of the economic impact of the closing of OIC? This was devastating like a tsunami. And so I want to pass it to Jay Allen because he's told me a plethora about OIC and the impact that this had on the impact that the closing had on the community?
Well, when closing OIC, at the time OIC closed, OIC was the largest black employer in the city of Milwaukee. It had over 300 employees working for OIC. And am I unmuted? Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
you can hear you.
We hear
Okay,
you, yes.
okay, yeah, and also OIC helped a lot of smaller not-for-profit organizations that were on the north side. I mean, OIC was like the hub of all the activity relative to, to black folks in terms of doing business and doing social services on the north side of Milwaukee. And it was, I couldn't tell you what the economic impact was. I know it was devastating because most of the people there had very good jobs and they were doing providing vital services for folks in the central city. And it's too bad that OIC had to go down, but it was definitely a serious loss to us in terms of activities on the north side. Also, we controlled a lot of things politically by having OIC on the north side, and it's been a big disadvantage to us not having an entity like OIC.
Well, the mistakes that OIC made were common mistakes that any other business would make. The system just let OIC die for whatever reason within their own selves. They closed their eyes, turned their backs, and they themselves were regular visitors and participants and organizers and helpers of OIC. From the governor all the way down to the shine board. Excuse me, please. I didn't mean to step in on your question there.
No, I appreciate that.
No, but that was good. They added a lot of activity went through YC for the north side. They controlled a lot of activity, a lot of good positive things that they provided to the community, and was sorry that they had to go out.
World African Festival every year is sponsored by OIC.
So just to clarify, can you can you give what the acronym OIC means, and then describe a little bit about some of the programs and services that OIC offered?
Opportunity Industrialization Center. Matter of fact, if you look up Reverend Leon Sullivan, he was the organizer of Operation Industrial Development, and OIC basically, initially they started out as a job service program. They helped people with job skills. They helped a lot of people. Right now, you don't have that bigger area, that agency that helped people in terms of develop their job skills. OIC got a lot of people employed. They had the largest weatherization program in the state of Wisconsin. They did all the weatherization for the north side. And like Clayborn said, they also provided, support for the African American Festival and Carl and them. I mean, they were the largest OIC in the world.
That's right.
Yeah.
OIC is a national organization, and the one in Milwaukee is the largest in the entire world.
That's crazy. I guess I'll ask, this kind of hinted at a little bit, but what exactly happened without getting too deep into the woods? Like, what happened to OIC?
A bunch of things. They made mistakes. I mean, they made mistakes. There's no question about it. Inappropriate spending of money. I mean, they made lots of mistakes.
OIC made mistakes, but there was no reason other than a political reason for OIC to disappear.
That's right. None.
There was no other reason other than that. I mean, Carl, got convicted, went to jail, but OIC was still there. But they went about piece by piece of dismantling OIC because OIC was key. Yep. Once they got in and looked at all the things that OIC was doing, which was a lot of positive. Yeah, they made some mistakes, but all entities, I mean, not all entities, but people make mistakes. But there was no reason to take down OIC other than political.
Yep.
And I sat there and I went through the process with them of going to all the meetings and all the the court hearings and stuff like that. And I would say unequivocally, yeah, because OIC still should be there. They provide a valuable service to the north side of Milwaukee.
Appreciate that history. And I know there's a plethora of articles, folks, that you can look up online. I was doing some research recently about it. It's some deep and interesting stuff, and I think J. Allen and Clayborn hit on the head. It's definitely systemic targeting, some racial injustice happening with the closing of OIC.
Before he passed on, he gave many of the business records to Wisconsin Black Historic Study. So we have lots of materials about photographs and the whole thing. I mean, inventory it all yet, but clearly we have a lot of stuff from OIC.
That's great. So I want to, Lashawnda had to dip out. She had another engagement, but I want to thank her for all the energy and gems and knowledge that she dropped during this presentation.
Yep.
I want to thank Mr. Clayborn Benson for his wonderful wisdom of knowledge, and Mr. J. Allen Stokes for just the great perspective and history that he has in Milwaukee as well. He's lucky he's getting to enjoy life in Mississippi right now while the rest of us do.
Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Years and years. But thank you all so much for attending. I do want to just pass it on to you two one more time. One, anything you want to share, any news or anything, and then I'll ask, what is something positive in Milwaukee's future for Black people that you're actually looking forward to? Tough question. Oh,
I like some of the energy and some of the intelligence that I've been seeing and hearing around walking out from the young people. I like what I hear. I like what I see. I like Clayborn people say, we stepping forward. We stepping out there. We raising the question. They raising the question, and they also going for some answers. And they're saying that they want to see something different than what has been before. I like that. You need that energy. You need that young folks saying that, no, we going to talk to y'all about this now. And we want to see something different. And I think that, with that young energy and that intelligence, they can take things to the next level.
Thank you, Mr. Benson.
I'm good. I like that continuation. I like Lashawnda was talking about. I mean, the spirit that she brings, but many of our young people had that, and I like it. That's what we're in the game for. This is some rough world here, and you got to bring all your energy and your fight to the game.
There you go.
You can't be playing with it. You can't be playing with other folks. You got to be real and upfront. This is it here. This is our life.
That's it.
Thank you.
We're in Milwaukee, and we ain't going nowhere.
Ain't going nowhere.
I appreciate both of you, wisdom and perspective you give me. And I want to thank again everybody for coming. I'll say, to answer the last question that was thrown in, something that, if you are an ally or even a person of color, what can you do to support the Black community? Again, download the Milwaukee MKE Black app on Apple and Android devices, and find a local Black-owned business to support. Support with your time and money and all that good stuff. But yes, definitely support making the space for Black people to choose our own destiny if that's the choice that we want to do. And just, listen to Black people and what we say that you can do to provide and be of support. Don't assume that you have the answer. Let us lead when it's our lane, and we will definitely make it. And just support whatever that is. It's probably the best answer I could give right now. And so again, thank you all for coming again. We'll be having, of course, more of these kinds of conversations in the future, and we appreciate you all support.
All right,
everybody.
Peace.
Thank you.